The other thing was that we saw on the weekend, if we're talking about All Black trials, we saw Damien McKenzie and Beauden Barrett both doing their thing, Brynner, in Hamilton, and I think it was probably fair to say that Beauden Barrett looks like he's the guy at 10.
The month that Bodie has had, I think it's, Chip, I could be wrong here, but I think it's the best that I've seen him for a long time in terms of being in the 10 jersey. And I think if you look at the Blues last year, he wasn't there, but they played a different style. But I just think with the way that he has played, especially on the weekend, his game management, his kicking decisions, his counter-attack, he still looks electric. For someone at his age, he just looks like he's still got that pop, which I think has always been a massive attribute that he's had. So, and I know in Test match footy, Razor always does talk about that game management side. How can you alleviate pressure? Jip's touched on a lot and around his communication skills and how valuable he is for players in and around him, forwards and backs. So look, I think with the performance that he's had back to back, I think in the last month, and especially playing against a number 10 as well, the incumbent World Player of the Year, number 10, and Damien McKenzie. I think right now, if I had to pick I would pick Bodie at this current form.
I tell you what, to all the young kids out there too, look at how preparation leads to performance. They had the big speaker in the Mulu Bells at training all week as he kicked those goals, and he didn't even look like he blinked when he was out there.
Yeah, they had the sideline given.
Have a look on the Blues social media. I saw it, like they've done a comparison, basically saying here's the preparation week, and it was loud. I think it was Zane Sullivan was holding the speaker, and then it cuts to the game footage of Stone Cold Bodie just
slotting it.
Three of the best.
Yeah. He did have the odd one that went towards the corner
flag.
It
was over. You got the ones that matter.
Yeah.
But I do think it is a good lesson. Like, between, I've said it on here before, visualization and putting yourself in the moment does allow you, like I was even watching the game with my wife and I was like, it's over, it's done. They've got the result. She's like, hey, how are you not nervous for the kick? I was like, nah, Bodie's got it, because he just looks so focused. But I do agree with Bryn. The only game I can feel this season when he's been available, that he's had a quiet game with the Moana Pacifica game at North Harbour Stadium, where most of the Blues side would admit they had an off night. But other than that, even the game they lost against the Crusaders, when James O'Connor kicked the winning penalty goal, he was a big catalyst in that. We know, the Brumbies game, and then as Bryn said, the last few weeks, he's been a big part of why they've been so strong. And I still think his weapon is his turner's pace, his ability to leave defenders, and if he doesn't leave defenders, he commits defenders, which creates space and time for other people. So. And the chip and chase game's definitely still there, as we saw on the weekend. I will go back to what we said earlier in the year, because I can't stand, I suppose, panellists or people that make opinions and they just chop and change all the time. So I do want to reference, I still think we may see for different opposition, Damien McKenzie and Beauden Barrett have different strengths and weaknesses, and how that fits for that week. I still think that's something we'll need to get used to. It doesn't feel right because we've had a history of, the Dan Carters and the Andrew Murdens, Grant Fox.
Mertz and Spencer were in and out, weren't they, to some degree?
Yeah. To a point, but I think, for a bulk part,
they chose
through that sort of 95 to, whenever Spencer sort of took the Blues by storm, it's always been pretty solidified 10.
Yeah.
But I think they've still got a lot to offer, both of them, and I don't think, as I said a few weeks ago, you wouldn't have done the deals that they've done without these coaches knowing and having a plan in and around these two. So I don't think it's as simple as, that's it for the season.
Yeah.
I think we've probably tried to do that in previous season, and that's when it gets us in trouble because players dip in form and so forth. So, I just think there's opposition that will suit both players, and I think we'll see that still.
While we're talking 10, Rivers Reihana is starting to find his feet.
I think Rivers has been really good, and especially, I guess, in the conditions that we saw on the weekend, like his big boot and how far he can kick that ball in the long exit phases of the exit zone is really valuable. His game management in terms of being able to find space, whether it be 50-22s, find grass, and is also able to attack the line at pace as well, with being a little bit more bigger than Taha. So I think the the pack is really standing out. Jip just touched on with the Chiefs pack, and it's not to say they weren't going forward, but the Crusaders set piece, the physicality at the breakdown, being able to play on the front foot and kicking on their own terms has probably led to, I guess, where Rivers was able to perform really, really well on the weekend. And let's not underestimate the work outside him. You've got Noah Hotham, who I think has actually played really, really well in terms of what they're looking for in Christchurch, wet weather conditions, kicking game, his sniping ability that he's able to bring his X factor with what he scored, with how he scored his try. But David Havili and Will Jordan, the communication and the kicking pressure that they can also take off Rivers, I guess, makes it a little bit more easier, I think, for a 10 to be able to just play your own game, execute your own role and seeing what you're seeing, knowing that the confidence, if you are down at a ruck or you aren't able to be in that position, you've got Davey and Will that can, I guess, alleviate that pressure if he's not there to be able to do it for certain times in the game.
Brynner, I asked you this, you mentioned the Crusaders pack. Teams aren't named yet, obviously. If Tamaiti Williams is not there, how big a loss is he?
He's a big loss, and it's not just for set piece. And look, they're very fortunate. They've got George Bauer, another All Black that is able to, I guess, take that starting role. But what Tams does with ball in hand, I think, Jip, is going to be really missed. I think the physicality at the breakdown defensively, and more so on the attacking side, I feel that he's really big for the Crusaders in their DNA to get over that advantage line, and whether that's been able to set up the kicking for the team, or get over the advantage line for their phase play shape to be able to strike out wide, or just in around that second or third pod, it will be a massive loss. So I'm not too sure if there's any good doctors here down at Christchurch. Jim, I might have to go down and see the doc and see if he's going to be okay, because yeah, he'd be a big loss in a lot of areas, just not set piece wise, with how his performances and how big he is for the Crusaders.
Yeah, well, if you look at the game in Christchurch, it was won by set piece dominance.
They tore them apart in the first half.
Right, and that last scrum. So, yeah, I just think from a set piece point of view, he'd be a big hole.
The 5 penalties in the scrum was massive. They line out more and been able to have success line out more, and the transition as well with Leo Willie close to the line was another good example. But their kicking game was really good on the weekend. And what I loved about their kicking game is that you know what's going to be happening. You know they're going to be doing box kicks. You know they're going to be doing contestables off 10, 12, whoever it may be, or even off counter-attack. But it's their chase. It's the connections that they have each side of each other to be able to make that kick a really good kick through the chase pressure. Look, you look at Will Jordan, I think it was the 38th minute, and I know James O'Connor doesn't kick that ball out, but you look at the kick chase that he put in to be able to stop that, to then get a penalty. If James gets that right, they probably go to the corner and they score another try. But there were so many effort areas that the Crusaders did really well, and that's really based around what finals footy looks like for that club, and what I guess what they really value going into this part of the year.
To bring a bit of context to it, though, in terms of the contest, like if you look at the last game in Christchurch, the Blues, I would say Beauden and Finlay delivered a good kicking. They got 14 entries. Yeah, they did not take them, but they got in the 22. They had a high turnover count. So if they can mitigate those turnovers, I do think you've got a 9 and 10 that are in form, have got confidence. You've got a pack with a chip on their shoulder and a skipper that's playing out of his skin to lead them through what has been, a tough time. He's just led with his actions, hasn't said a lot, but he's delivered. I just think there's always a lot of talk, and I'm a big person of talking about the Crusaders know how to play in Christchurch, and you know what's coming, but you still got to stop it. And that's because I had 15 years of torture. So I'm just trying to bring myself out of that torture to go, well, if we do look at the facts, and they were poor in Eden Park,
yeah,
but they were very good in Christchurch, and they had a game plan, and they had a player that's played 130 odd tests, put them in the right part of the field. No, they didn't take it, but they were in the right part of the field.